Today, I'm going to take you on a journey through several ages of rock. Rock and roll originated in the United States during the late 1940s and early 1950s, and quickly spread through much of the rest of the world. The foundations of rock and roll is in rock and roll. The foundations of rock is in rock and roll. Let's talk a little bit about rock and roll. Rock and roll has a style which drew heavily on the African American genres of blues and rhythm and country music. In the 1940s, the main instrument would be such things as a saxophone or trumpet, but around the 1950s, the guitar became the main instrument within the song of rock and roll. Rock and roll impacted so many things and influenced things such as fashion, lifestyles, and language. It is also said rock and roll contributed to the civil rights movement because both whites and African Americans enjoyed the music and brought them closer. Rock and roll wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for people such as the Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, Little Richard, and Jerry Lee Lewis. By the 60s, rock music dominated the popular music charts, the Beatles being one of the most liked bands of the decade, and people still love them nowadays. The Beatles dominated the 60s record charts with 6 of the top 10 albums of the decade and 21 of the decade's top 100 singles. The Beatles broke up in 1940, but all 4 members continued to impact the 70s with successful solo careers. The 70s was also the time when bands that were touring moved from playing clubs to playing sports arenas. Big-time bands such as Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, The Who, Grand Funk, and Led Zeppelin started to play to thousands in arenas around this time. The 70s was also big for a new kind of rock music, such as punk rock. Punk rock evolved around this time. The 1970s also brought a bunch of deaths, such as Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, as well as Elvis Presley. In 1980, John Lennon, who is a member of the Beatles, was shot to death by Mark David Chapman. This was around the time that MTV and VH1 became very popular and available on more than 2,000 cable systems. Records and concerts to benefit charity are supported by many rock artists around this time as well. Alternative rock and its subgenres such as grunge and pop punk expanded into popularity in the 90s. Bands such as the Smashing Pumpkins, Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Smiths, and grunge bands such as Nirvana and very popular in the 90s. Look at any rock history retrospective and it will list a number of one Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit as the most important song of the 1990s. In the 90s is also when punk pop took the world by storm, with bands such as Blink-182 and Green Day. In 1994, Kurt Cobain, the lead singer of the grunge band Nirvana, was found dead at his home. Forensics ruled it out as a suicide. Now, let's jump back to nowadays. This year, in 2017, rock is still around. Some punk rock artists that are greatly known are bands such as 1975, Hey Violet, and All Time Low. Other bands that are really popular are rock bands such as Black Veil Brides and Panic at the Disco. Rock has lots of history and has had such an impact on how we